the thing I've been talking about, since I started all of this stuff in the first place is papers have already proven that even if you throw compute at the problem and you scale and scale and scale, it the return on efficiency and production value isn't linear. And as we scale to try to get more actionable models, more end to end models, the key is then having relevant data, not having a bigger parameter size, especially when it comes to doing onboard inferencing. So the bubble is going to pop, and then the focus is going to be more efficient models that are end to end that can operate on live fed data for things like robotics and weaponry and cars and shipping and all sorts of other supply chains. So like the real era of machine learning and AI that we all think about in the fiction is when we start to take those more bespoke purpose built techniques and combine them into a ecosystem that self-sustains by providing its own training data. Nvidia is trying to do this, they call it like physical AI or something like that, fancy marketing shit. But the real challenge is still that data is purposeful for that platform, for that robot, for that blah, 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 that motor. Very few people are focusing on how can we take separate data sets, different contexts, different domains, and find the manifold property that can connect them to enable them to be applied on a new, unique context, right? Because it's those manifold properties that things like LLMs and specifically transformer-based models are probing at that we can't really figure out because of the depth at which they are in the model. But you either try to poke a stick into the black box, and if you find something neat, give it to your robot, or you design the system to weed out and leverage those manifold connections just innately. So I foresee in the next 5 to 10 years, a lot of these larger companies sort of realizing this very same thing and shifting their funding, decreasing their marketing, and all that other stuff. Yeah, but like that's the same thing that Google was doing, Microsoft is doing, and like all of the companies that captchas. We've been doing captchas well before there were any kind of like common consumer machine learning, right? The whole point of a captcha is not just to verify that you're a person, but to use your humanity to label something. That's what a captcha was doing. Why do you think they made it like that, right? So, I would kind of disagree in the sense that they're one of the first companies to advertise themselves primarily as doing that. And that kind of marketing would not have worked before the ChatGPT era. It wouldn't have. Because any company using it is a company that has the capability of gathering that themselves or buying it from one of those larger organizations that just gets it inevitably as a byproduct of their actual operations. Making it a focus of your operations is unique, and marketing it in this time is unique. I don't know what their back end is like, but the idea of data curation and data labeling is not uncommon, and there's tons of companies doing this for cheap labor, internationally in particular. And I don't think they're focusing on making this data. I think they're focused on helping people with their silos. So they're not really focused on the interconnectedness. And when it comes to curation, they have like search tools and stuff. But that's neat. Maybe that's new. It feels just this. Yeah, that's the goal. I mean, because the solution to this comes down to the knowledge crisis problem, but it also comes down to the instrumentation, right? If you want to be able to take action on real world situations, you can't be, inferencing on those actions through an LLM that then is derivative from, all these other contexts. You need something that's data relevant. And if you want to build a company or build a product that has that kind of technique, then you have to spend tons and tons of money curating that data and training on it. It's an inefficient thing, and it's happening in the science sector, it's happening in defense, it's happening in the consumer sector, and I think very few people have a incentive to focus on the future-proof solution because currently it's a bubble, and so they're getting the investor hype, they're marketing the next big thing, they're calling it agents, they have to move at a pace that doesn't foresee the long-term applications. It only gets the response that's needed in the next sector or next quarter. So eventually once the bubble pops and they have to really start thinking about how are they going to make money off this, because again, they're not making money off this. It's not profitable by any means for most of them. So other than, investors and hype. Especially, well, there's many solutions. It depends on the problem you're talking about. But one core key technical thing is just knowledge integration through, manifold latent spaces. So you're taking and training. You are building a system that has a model embedded in it, which learns how data is contextualized, organized, and arranged. So when you need to inference or train, you don't go and manually curate it. It is already clustered according to those parameters. And so you have connections between data sets and contexts innately built into your knowledge network, and you reinforce it by people then going, accessing, searching, clicking, and connecting those things for you. So do you have free human-in-the-loop verification? It's a system that builds itself. It's literally perfection. I wouldn't have dedicated my life to it if I didn't know it was the thing. But I know it is the thing. Guaranteed. It's just the resources to develop and scale such a problem is pretty much at the level of the government, which is why I am working with the government on it now. No, we can't. That was the original goal, but it costs, a couple $1 million just to start it cost a couple $100,000 to get the lawyers to write up the paperwork to sell equity at all. To sell equity publicly, which was the other goal, is like millions of dollars. I mean, because society is set up for the rich. You can't make money unless you have some rich investor. And I'm not going to dedicate my life to just convincing some rich dude that this is the idea. I'm just going to fucking do it myself. And eventually people will realize that I'm the expert. And that's the thing, is I'm not trying to shit on, the guy at scale. He's been very successful. He's very visionary, did a great job. But his focus was marketing. This company's been around for a while. In the last year, he's been going on podcasts. He's been posing himself as a perfect acqui-hire for the elephant in the room problem, the oil of machine learning being the data. So but that is a different skill. It's a different task list. You are dedicating yourself to marketing the idea, not building the idea. Because these days you build it by marketing it, but then you let it become tainted by the short term, I want the investors to be happy about blah, blah, blah. This is something that isn't going to be finished in my lifetime. In the same way that many missions are conceptualized by people that die before they even see them launched, let alone reach their target. I don't see a need in developing an idea that's going to, make billions in my exact lifetime. I see it as a domino that somebody needs to start. No, can't afford that. Don't have the time for it. Also, I am very good in the business stuff and marketing stuff, but I don't have the time for it. And you can't hire people unless you have money. Don't have the money for that. It went way low on my priority list a long time ago. And now I'm working on the technology for the government instead. The company's just now an LLC that I can be paid under for other projects. At this point, I'm just going to keep working on it. And when somebody notices, they're going to have to pay up to get my expertise. Uh, Pretty soon, hopefully, I'll be getting a job. And I'm working on this right now, which is for a government agency. I would like them to take all of their databases and connect them using this. Kind of like the early internet. I think they're a really good way of testing a knowledge network and knowledge integration, data fusion, because they really need it for a lot of the stuff they do. In a way, but it's just going to be a postdoc. It's more so that, like the guy did for Scale, you become known for it, and then people come to you. You know what I mean? Once these large I'm hoping once these large organizations realize it, then I'll have a dissertation out talking about this very problem 10 years before they even thought of it. You know what I mean? And then there'll be, thousands of hours of record of me literally working on it. I can't afford the lawyers to defend IP, but you can either try to fight against somebody who's better than you and faster than you and started earlier than you, or you can pay him and hire him. You just have to learn about me. But that's why I don't want to grow and scream and market right now, because I'm not ready. We still have things to do. Is it related to space research? A little bit. It's all remote sensing. I'm getting hungry. Probably, yeah. Like 5 to 10. Right? And that's just to that's the problem, is that's not even to invest in the technology. That is to hire lawyers to write paperwork. That's it. That's the most ridiculous part about it. I mean, to build the model and this database it requires the resources of of a bunch of companies, right? But to be able to spend the time to have the IP, to have the name, to have the lawyers, to go to those companies and be like, hey, let's work on this. You have to have the millions of dollars, because you have to be able to sell the equity in your stake in the process. So you either have to be Google already and just sell it to them, or you have to have independent control of it and management of the IP, which is just a financial investment to get the protection of it. What about the tech included? I don't know, because it depends on the scale. So you could do this at a very small scale. You could do a demonstration with, 10 employees with a small server, very basics. I mean, technically I could do it if I had the time, but that demonstration is going to be very so that we could take that and then go to one of these large organizations that already has databases and data in vast quantities that needs this. That's the point. Is I can't just sit here and be like, okay, well, we would need to, you would need to buy a Google side server and then have a need for data. We don't have the need for data. You would have to be Scale, or go to Scale and be like, hey, Scale, you guys are doing the wrong thing. We're going to join as a competitor. Would you like to help? Stuff like that. Or you do what I'm trying to do. There's 3 paths. The government side is the thing that I see as most convenient, because I can continue my normal way of living and do that. If I was to try to go private sector, I'd have to focus on getting my name out there and marketing it, right? But everybody in the government sector says this is a genius idea. Do it in the private sector. Because they all spent a lifetime in, the government sector seeing nothing happen, right? One of the guys that is potentially going to hire me soon is yeah, I've been talking to them about doing this kind of thing for a decade. It's just now that they're starting to realize it because of because of the LLM era. But so if you really position yourself with like a really good understanding of the situation, right? Then you get one of these larger groups, government, private, whatever, and you say, hey, you guys have this data, you have this need for this data, give our team 2, 3, 5 years to, copy a portion of the data network that you have and what you're doing with it, and demonstrate knowledge integration and data fusion at this scale. And if you like it, then you can slowly, weed this into a back end. And then after you get it in the back end and you start to use it for internal operations, well, then you can start making interfaces for customers where you can say, okay, the data that you use for, if you're Google Cloud, for example, everybody pays for your computers and for your consoles and for your services like AWS. Well, now you could provide the data. You can say, okay, if you're doing an image model, we have this, vast image data set from all these different resources that have all agreed to work with us so that we have, the biggest and the best data sets possible. And we have it curated and labeled in this way. But if you need it curated and labeled in that way, well, that's all right, because our system is automated. You just prompt it and you say, hey, I need a model focused on license plates that are of a contrast higher than this percentage. And it'll, go and apply a filter, and it'll say, okay, we're going to, search for in this branch of license plate in that branch of brightness. And all of those branches are things that you learn in an unsupervised way, right? Because as you access the knowledge network, in order to get something specific, you are going down branches, so you're reinforcing them. And then when you do the original knowledge integration, when you do the iterative training, you are helping it learn what the manifold connections are, even if they're not labeled, right? But then over time, once you get enough of those things, they label themselves effectively, right? Because if you take two, pieces of knowledge and two data sets, and they're both cars with license plates, and the license plates are metal, and it's a bright day, and all of those things line up except one difference, and that, and you're looking for that one difference, and you can see it in these two different. So the point is it's something that reinforces itself once it hits a certain size, right? Before it's that size, it's really a demonstration of the potential of the broader system. But if you go to like the government, for example, who has a vast amount of these data sets that are just sitting there, and they're paying millions and millions and millions of dollars yearly for small groups like the one I'm working for to curate data for one particular model, they're just going to keep doing that over and over and over again, as opposed to finding a shirt-proof way to always have data that is curated and labeled without having to actually do it in the moment. It's very conceptual. It's very like, you need, this is the outcome I want. And so all of the little bits of technology, so whether that be peer-to-peer compute and storage, things that Wings has taught me about, whether it be, models that are end-to-end and on board. So those are the ones that the sensors are then feeding live data to. So this kind of model, or the manifold properties ones, which are a little bit more complicated. And, we don't have any technological demonstrations of this because, it would take me a year to just conceptualize, or just to build a demonstration of it. And I'm focused on this one right now. So this is a lifetime kind of effort to, however, remove the need to ever pay for data curation in the future, in theory. And then once you hit a certain scale as well, this is the whole other thing, is once you hit a certain size of the amount of data that you have that's well curated, every other organization is just going to want to work with you. And your one, stipulation is that if you want access to the data set, you have to contribute to the data set, right? And there's, agreements, more finesse within that. But the point is that we start to work towards all models have access to all data, instead of all the infighting and buying of information, which is just going to consolidate culture and consolidate technology such that, the people that have the mechanical solution, the people that have the market solution, and the people that have the model solution are unlikely going to be the same people that have the data to make those things happen. And every break in that chain is going to negatively affect our ability to evolve this stuff. it really has vast implications for the efficiency with which we're going to be able to deal with the the data problem. I mean, let's say you're Google or Amazon or whatever, right? And let's say you're Google and Amazon wants to use your data set, right? But you know Amazon's doing their own stuff in the back end. And you say, hey, you have this, we have this, let's combine it, right? If you want to use our services, you could pay this amount and then, this amount of data you can protect from, you know what I mean? There's ways that you can finesse it. But the point is that we are trying to encourage taking the data silos and the knowledge silos that IP consolidation and late stage capitalism has kind of led to, and break them down for the benefit of both organizations. You know what I mean? Because either we're gonna spend money and energy mostly on fighting over who owns what, when in reality we have no way of knowing. Right? There's no proper heritage for most knowledge. Science does a decent job with papers and authorship and stuff, but the legal system doesn't do a good job because it's whoever buys it. It's the point, and whoever has the lawyers to be able to protect it with it. Like, there's so many ideas that were created well before they were actually patented, kind of thing. But the point being that this is going to be a system that does provide that kind of heritage traceability, and so we're going to shift the economy from being who can buy the idea to who has the most curated knowledge of it, right? And start to hopefully, shift kind of the knowledge economy and address the knowledge crisis by encouraging the monetization of better ideas, not, better profits. It would be very good and attractive, but like I would have to stop doing 50 projects that I am doing right now, stop doing my PhD, which I'm going to defend in the fall, and start doing that, right, as a full-time. And I don't make money. I barely pay my rent right now. I actually don't. I take debt. So like I can't do that. It's just not within my. I need to finish my degree, and then when I finish my degree, I need to get a fucking job so I can afford to live. It's unfortunate, but yeah, it's like I said, it would be dedicated. It is a different life. It is a different career to try to push something into the private sector than, where I'm at. I gotta pee.